You know, when I look back over some of the places I've flown over the years, I could easily tell you where I went, how long the flight was, and even how much it cost. But if I'm being honest, I'd struggle to tell you how much pollution those journeys emitted. However, recently I've been seeing adverts like this.
The world's first carbon neutral airline.
100% green.
Newer, greener, better.
Now, the International Air Transport Association, or IATA, which is a group of almost 300 airlines, has set those companies a target. Net carbon zero by 2050.
We have 29 years of work to do, don't worry about that.
It's a big challenge, one that IATA forecast could cost $2 trillion. That's because the industry has thrived on fossil fuels, and it's yet to find anything as efficient or as economical as kerosene. In 2019, it pumped out around 1 billion metric tons of CO2. That's roughly 2.8% of global CO2 emissions from burning fossil fuels. So IATA has proposed some methods for airlines to try and hit that net zero target. But the key word there is net. More on that later.
The target is aspirational and it's hugely ambitious.
So in the future, will I ever be able to say that I'm flying without polluting? Well, to find out more, I called IATA and I spoke to our resident aviation reporter, Doug Cameron. Let's dive in. The largest part of IATA's plan is sustainable aviation fuels, or SAF. The association says that by 2050, these fuels could account for 65% of emission reductions.
Think of sustainable aviation fuel a bit like the ethanol that is blended into gas in the US.
They're made from things like plants, cooking oil, or even some of the waste from your home. And their emissions are calculated by looking at the total life cycle of the fuel, from creation to end use, and not just what comes out of the tailpipe. But
the problem is it's expensive to make unless you make a lot of it. What the airlines want the governments to do is to start subsidising the refineries so it doesn't cost as much.
Right now, IATA says there's only enough capacity to produce around 100 million litres of it a year. But to hit those net zero targets, IATA forecasts that by 2050, the industry will need
around about 450 billion litres. So really is a big number. And to give you context, that's about 1.5 times all of the jet fuel used in 2019.
So another option that the industry is exploring is hydrogen, which is also yet to achieve commercial scale. I actually did a whole video on Airbus's plans for hydrogen planes, and I've left a link to that below. Check it out once you've finished watching this one. Hydrogen also has a few hurdles to overcome.
We need to make the hydrogen. That's complex. So that requires a huge expansion of renewable electricity capacity.
The fuel also takes up more space than kerosene. Just check out how much extra space it takes on Airbus's proposed hydrogen planes. And according to IATA, even if every single short-haul aircraft was replaced with a hydrogen or an electric plane, it would still only account for around a quarter of emissions. So if the industry can't fully eliminate its CO2 emissions, maybe it can try and bury some of them instead.
You're basically finding a big mine or an old oil well in Texas and shoving that carbon dioxide down underground.
IATA said that it forecasts that carbon capture will account for 11% of emissions reduction by 2015. But
it's embryonic in its technology development. We think it will play a role.
So you may have noticed a bit of a theme here, and that's that right now, none of the methods that I've mentioned are at a scale where they could hit those emissions targets. But there is one measure that the industry is using today, and that's carbon offsetting. It works by airlines measuring how much CO2 they emit and then simply buying credits towards projects that, in theory, counter that CO2 production. However,
these have not really had huge take-up. A few big airlines have got them. People are very suspicious about following through. Did they actually plant that tree? Is my name on it? So that's a tricky one.
In the near term, IATA says that offsetting will account for a whopping 97% of emission reduction, but that's a number that they hope will go down in the future. In order for that to happen though, many of these other measures that we've just discussed would have to become a commercial reality. But even with all those measures in place, it still seems like fossil fuels will have some role in my future flights. So if we're going to keep flying, we may have to come to terms with the fact that the aviation industry may never hit true carbon zero. Hey, each one of the measures that I've discussed in this video could be its own video, so which ones are you interested in? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, if you're interested in the future of how we might be getting from A to B, then don't forget to subscribe. See you soon.